I'm back with another storytime video. Y'all have requested this. This is a video that y'all usually request because y'all just love story times. So this is a story time about, my dad committing suicide. I mentioned it in the video when I talked about my brother committing suicide, and I did plan on doing a story time on it. I just wanted to do that one first, and I thought I was going to do it like earlier than what I did, but whatever, I'll just bring it to y'all now. Everything that I'm saying in this story is basically kind of secondhand, more so third-hand information, because when my dad committed suicide, I was a lot younger than when my brother committed suicide. That happened when I was 6 years old. So yeah, it's only but so much that you can tell a 6-year-old that she can understand. So the way that I dealt with that situation was a lot differently than how I'm dealing with my brother committing suicide. The same rules apply for the last video. Be considerate about what you leave in the comment section. This is a touchy subject, so think about if you lost a loved one, how you would want people to respond to it. If you don't have anything nice to say, then just don't comment. I'm just gonna give you some background information on my father's side of the family because it'll be relevant like later in the story. My father's side of the family is pretty different, but I'm trying to word this nicely. Like, my father's side of the family has a lot of issues. My grandfather is a child molester. I know that sounds really crazy, but it's true. He molested one of my aunts, which is his daughter. One of his daughters, might have been two, but yeah. I know that sounds really crazy, but it's true. He molested one of my aunts, which is his daughter. One of his daughters, might have been two, but yeah. So that in itself is enough to make any of his siblings, any of his children, even ones that weren't victims of molestation, to have any type of mental illnesses or anything like that. So that's that as far as how that goes with my granddad. My father's side of the family suffers with a lot of mental illnesses, between depression, schizophrenia, bipolarism. It's real. I was told that he was a child molester probably when I was 11, maybe 12. I was a little older. Maybe later than that, probably like 13. So I was a lot older when I found my mom, broke the news to me that my grandfather was a child molester. Growing up, before my father died, I don't remember spending a lot of time with my grandparents. I didn't see them often until after my father died. When I was born, my father made it very clear to my father, my father made it very clear to my grandfather that if he ever touched me or did anything, I'm not going to tell you exactly what he said, but it was going to be real. So that was that. And he, told my mom that I, under no circumstances, was to be allowed to be around him alone. So I never in my life have stayed over my grandparents' house. That's that. I know that my aunts, aren't really as close with my grandmother. Of course they're not close to my grandmother, but they're not really, connected with my grandmother for multiple reasons. One, because, after the molestation, my grandmother is still with my grandfather till this day. And yeah, she didn't leave him. And, if my aunts have children too. So if they say, grandma, you can see my child, but he's not to be around, my dad, she would still allow that to happen. So that's why my aunt they're not really that close with my grandmother, which is understandable. I'm not close with my grandmother or my grandfather, not for that reason, because I never was a victim of any type of anything with my grandfather. Yeah, I'm just not close with them because it's just easier for me to kind of block that part of my life about my dad being deceased out. It's easier for me to block it out if I don't communicate with my dad's side of the family. I have a stepfather and he treats me like I'm his own child. He's been there since before my father died. So it's kind of like I'm not really missing a dad, if that makes sense. So it's just easier for me to block that part of my life out if You know, I don't talk to them as much, and you know, it's just a lot of shit with that side of my family. But I don't have anything against my aunts, especially my aunt. They're just, every time I see them, they're very nice to me. So yeah, I love all of my aunts, all three of them. So yeah. My mom and my dad met when my mom was about 16. My mom had me when she was 19. They might have met when she was 15, but they known each other for a couple of years before they had me. My mom, that was her first boyfriend. You know, they lived together, blah blah blah, all that good old stuff. My dad cheated on my mom while she was pregnant with me with someone. You know her name. I'm not gonna tell y'all her name, but my dad cheated on my mom while she was pregnant with me with another woman. Long story short, my dad ends up leaving my mom for my stepmom. I'm just finding out recently that before he left my mom, he asked one of my aunts, like, who do you think I should stay with? You know, Kanissa's mother or such and such. So my aunt said my mom, and my dad said, well, you know, she has a big mouth, and she means that because we're really loud. We talk a lot. And from what I know, my dad was pretty chill, so that I guess I got on his nerves, which is a dumb reason not to leave somebody, but whatever, do what you do. He left my mom, but that was all fine. My mom said that she and my dad were really great friends. My mom got a new boyfriend. That's how she had my sister. They were fine as friends, you know, co-parenting. I would go see my dad. I'm not going to say often, but I saw him enough to, like, yeah, I saw him enough when I was little. I remember going over there out to his apartment, and you know, my dad and his wife, because he married her, they had a son, and I can say his name because that's my brother. They had a son, and his name is Isaiah. And I do remember my mom telling me that his wife did not like my mother. I didn't really know why. Come on, I was like 5 or 6, but I just know that if my dad would come pick me up, she wouldn't come in the house. She would stay in the car. The only time I remember her coming in the house was Christmas and birthdays, because when my dad was giving me the present, she wanted to be there when she delivered the present to me. She was never really mean to me, more so off-standing, like, kind of like I didn't exist. And back then, I didn't notice it, but now that I'm older and things are starting to unfold, I realized that maybe she was as off-standing as she was because she had a problem with me. When I would go over there, I remember my little brother being very, very, very disrespectful. Like, I'm talking about, he would cuss at his mother. Like, he was just out of line. And he did it mostly when my dad wasn't around. Like, he was bad. Like, my little brother was bad. Him and my sister are exactly 3 months apart. My sister's birthday is November 7th. His birthday is February 7th. So they're 3 months apart. He said basically that my stepmother didn't like him and my mother's relationship. They were extremely, extremely close. And my dad, I mean, she didn't like it. Now, I know my mother like the back of my hand. That's my mother. I came out of her vagina. She's not a home wrecker. Regardless of if she feels, oh, you know, oh, you did it to me, I'm gonna do it back, you know. She's just not that type of woman. She's not that type. And she had a whole new man. Like, my sister, she was dating my sister's dad. So she was well moved on to be worried about what my dad is doing with his new wife and all that sugar nugget. She didn't care. They had a good friendship. They were friends and boyfriend and girlfriend before they had me. They had a strong relationship, and basically she had a problem with it. She didn't like it. So of course, by her not liking their relationship, that comes off to me as like, I don't want you going over there. She didn't want him seeing me after a period of time. She said basically it got to a point where he just stopped calling me. He stopped coming to see me. And I do remember it being a really long gap before I saw my father. And then I remember the very last time that I saw him. You know, my mom basically was talking to my dad like, you know, you either gonna be in her life or you not. We're not doing this in and out thing. You know, what's going on? And she said my father just broke down and was like, it's not me, it's her. She this, she that. She don't want me seeing Kenise. I don't know what to do. Because, you know, he was married to her, and regardless of who he was with, even if he wasn't with either one of us, he had 2 children by 2 different women. So he didn't want to abandon him to be with me, and vice versa. So regardless of the women, it was more so about his kids. Like, I can't choose between my kids, and she was trying to make him choose. The day before my sister's birthday, my dad calls my mom early in the morning. I'm not as emotional about this as I was the last story because, like I said, I was sick. So My mom will probably be more emotional telling the story than me. Like when I recently asked her to give me a run back so I can give y'all the most accurate information of what happened that day. She teared up like I did in my brother committing suicide story, you know, because, you know, that was, they were close. Regardless of if they were in a relationship, that was the father of her child, her first boyfriend, her first love. It will hurt anybody. She said that he called her early in the morning, and she said before he called, she said she remembered him being really, really down and depressed. She said she went to go see him or something, and she said he was just like really, really depressed. He was just so depressed. And she said when she talked to him that morning, she said he was crying and running and panting, saying it's so much blood, it's so much blood, it's so much blood. He said what he did. He shot his wife, and he was like, it's so much blood. I don't know how many times he shot at her. I don't know. But I know that he shot her and he thought that she was dead. He was like, it's so much blood, it's so much blood, it's so much blood. My mother's, of course, she's like, okay, calm down, calm down. He's like, no, I'm about to kill myself. Like, look what I just done. And she was like, no, please don't do it. You know, she's begging him not to do it, not to do it. And he was basically saying, she's like, you have 2 children, you have Kanish, you have Isaiah, you know, don't do this. And he's like, no, it's capital punishment for things like this. So he thought that he killed her and that he was going to get capital punishment and, you know, lethal shit, and it just wasn't going to be nice for him. So my mom was telling him like, no, even if you go to jail, they can visit you from jail. But he thought that, you know, he was going to get killed, capital punishment. She said she heard him running through the woods, and she said she could hear the helicopters chasing him. And she said she said she hung up the phone because she thought, no, she let him know, like, you know, I love you, blah, blah, blah. And she said she just hung up the phone because she thought that he was going to do it on the phone, and she didn't want to hear that. So apparently, you know, he left the call, the sound of him killing himself, on my grandmother's voicemail. My mother said she did eventually go back and listen to it once, and she said you heard the gunshot go off, you heard him drop the phone, hit the ground, you can hear when the paramedics came, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So they got them, and they was both sent to shock trauma. Neither one of them died immediately. The next day is my sister's birthday, and my mom's friends are telling them, like, you know, you have to play it normal, you have to play it cool. They'll take the girls out. And I remember this day so vividly, but I didn't know till years later what was going on. So they took us downtown Baltimore to go take pictures with my sister. And I remember my mom saying, you're going to stay with grandma, I'm going to go somewhere real quick and I'll be right back. She was going to see my dad in the hospital because it was the day after, and he and my stepmom were in a coma. We took the pictures, everything normal. He died, she didn't. She was paralyzed. He didn't kill her, but she was paralyzed. My mom told me that when she got to the hospital, you know, my stepmother's mother was there, and she was talking to my dad's mom, and she was like, oh, I never met your other daughter. They thought that my mom was one of my aunts. And my grandmother said, no, this is not my daughter. This is Edwina, Kanissa's mom. And she said that, I don't know if it was my grandmother or my aunt, but it was something like that. And she said that the whole family, like my stepmother's mother, her family, they all just got up and left. So I don't know who was, I think my mother said a pastor, I really don't remember, but somebody went and got them and was like, if you haven't learned anything about the 2 lives of these 2 people, you know, we need to be more close right now than anything. So my mother said she knew from that day on that it was going to be some mess with my stepmother's side of the family. After that, you know, my dad died. She didn't. She's paralyzed from, like, under the boob down. You know, my mom broke the news to me. She picked me up from school early, and we went home, and she told me, she said, Kenise, there was a gunshot the other day. And I just looked at her, and she said, your father is dead. So I just started crying hysterically. I'm just crying and crying and crying. That was just that. I started going to therapy, and she told me I'm going to stay a week, maybe 2 weeks into therapy, that he committed suicide. My mother wanted to keep the information from me about him committing suicide, but the therapist told her, you know, that's not healthy. You have to give her as much information as possible, because it's like every time I will find out more information, it will be reliving the experience all over again. So the therapist told her, you know, you need to tell her, because, you know, with you telling her that someone else shot her father, she's going to go around looking for